Bingo. There we go. Well, here we start up our clickety-clacks and tubes and typewriters. Remember typewriters? They're happy little things that we have. Welcome to Evolution Hour. And yay! Troubles in Paradise, Methodology of Creationism, where I investigate source by source all the various attitudes of evolution. I better get closer to the microphone here so we have what's going on here. And let me stop the sharing and shut that little puppy down and begin the program. La-di-da. So, howdy, folks. We got Jackson here and Crocker Squirrel, who is out doing some stuff, and we'll be back in due course as people who can watch the live feed, which at the moment, yes, Brian is there. Hi, Brian. And as usual, the big ticket item on the agenda is our exciting world of Contested Bones, the wonderful creationist book that says all the wonderful things that the creationists want you to know. And we're currently investigating Australopithecus sediba, which is one of these, as obviously the name indicates, an Australopithecine. And it's been in some controversy about how close it is to the human line, the Homo line, whether or not they were tool makers, what kind of a mosaic between Australopithecines and human things there are. And so it's been contentious. There are various little camps involved in. That's where they're starting to dive into in the Rupi Sanford book. Needless to say, every source that suggests that Australopithecus is just an ape, it instantly is going to be authority quoted for that purpose. And anything about it that suggests otherwise is like, you don't think about that. And so there were several papers that they were launching into, most of which, fortunately, are open access. So I put a bunch of links up to those in the verbal description so everybody can follow along. There's on the thorax and the foot and hands and a whole bunch of stuff on the Sediba. And some guides. There's a thing from Ann Gibbons in Science that summarized the contrarians in the area that are arguing that no, this is more likely a close relative of one of the Australopithecines and not so close to the human line. And the issue about how bipedal they were, everybody agrees that they could climb trees and blah, blah, blah. So by reading the original material, hopefully, you get a bigger picture of what's going on here. The one thing that always annoys me about the creationist counter arguments is we never know what they think. What the heck would a transitional form between an ape form and a human look like? What would it need to look like for them to go, well, boy, that's a human evolution transitional. Wow, I can agree on that one. Never, zero, none, nobody ever works that out in the creationism side. This is a 100% failure rate, and I call that a litmus test. So whenever you're dealing with somebody who's complaining about lack of transitional forms, you want to force them onto the turf to explain, well, what would it need to look like? And you will discover, as I've discovered again and again and again, that they've never thought about this, and you can't get them to think about it because it's basically a pigeonhole. There's the humans and not humans, the thing and not thing, and there can never be something in the middle. But the reason why there's a debate about Australopithecus sediba is precisely because it's got these mosaic characteristics. It's got stuff that's more leading into what we would expect from humans at the same time that it's still got some retained, obviously will have retained characteristic from the Australopithecines. The neat thing about the newer papers are that they're paying a lot more attention to some of the genetic and developmental biology ends of things. Like one of the reasons is one of the Australopithecus fossils is of a juvenile. And that instantly brings up the issue, what did it grow up into? So now you're looking at juvenile growth characteristics, growth patterns, how skulls normally develop in primates versus human beings and all that stuff. And all that is discussed in these various technical papers. And the fact that there's this I think a word that creationists should probably despise because they all seem to get troubled about it is mosaic. The idea that you have characteristics A, B, C, D, E and characteristics H, I, J, K, L in two different groups. How do you get from one to the other? Well, do you have to drop all the ABCs to get to the other one? What if we share the ABC as well? And what if you have things occurring incrementally to where it acquires this characteristic and keeps this one for a while, but then drops that one? Just how many different options do you have in this goes to the whole point of how genetic variations work, how developmental biology works, how things work in the real world, in real examples of things. And that data field just doesn't impinge on the anti-evolution mindset ever. And there's literally no counterexample in it. They don't think through, okay, as a devil's advocate, let's assume that none of the evidence supports evolution. What would the evidence look like if it did support evolution? And let's look at what the evidence is to compare those two. They don't get to that part. So it's all, I'm going to push away the data field approach or pigeonhole. And you found it with the Archaeopteryx, where most anti-evolutionists say it's just a bird. It's not a dinosaur. Never mind, it's got a tail and teeth and all the rest, and it doesn't have a fully developed sternum yet. It's just a bird.
Nor did Archaeopteryx have a beak.
Yeah. Yeah, and in fact, the fun part is now that we're actually able to retro-engineer the process that archosaur snouts turn into beaks. Because you can take a bird and pull back some of the genes and deactivate them, and the old archosaur dinosaur snout shows up. And what was really interesting about it is, although one of the genes had definitely been implicated in the process, one of the others that they were tinkering with hadn't previously been considered as one of the relevant things in here. So it turns out, as usual, there's more than one way to generate a bird beak in this phenomenon, and probably will, by inference, relate to the formation of various predentary bones and other kinds of superstructures that are going on. Beaklessness or toothlessness shows up a lot in some of the later dinosaurs, and it's presumably using a lot of the same dynamics that you're finding in birds, with the exception that they don't form a conventional beak in the way that the birds do. They just have toothless jaws.
Yeah, like the ornithomimosaurs or the alvarezsaurs and the therizinosaurs, who were either omnivorous or herbivorous. They also have a backwards pubis, just like birds, even though they obviously aren't birds. And so it's
that's
like,
the neat thing. So much that in contrast, what always fascinates me between mammals and dinosaurs is how relatively boring mammals are compared to dinosaurs. That we're much less prolific in all areas but one. Boy, do we got teeth down. That whereas the dinosaurs have relatively stable tooth forms, and they're in a few forms, and then those proliferate, but they're basically variations on those little themes. Mammals are unique in developing a dentary bone that's having this various specialized teeth, to the point where way more than almost any other group that I can think of offhand, next to sharks, are that you can identify some species just on the peculiarity of the teeth, even if you don't have anything else attached.
Yeah, like the Y5 molar in primates, for instance.
But mammals are relatively conservative. Almost all retain the pentadactyl limb. There's a few groups like horses that have dropped those sorts of things. Our neck vertebrae, there's only, I think, sloths and manatees are the only ones that have other than 7 neck vertebrae. So a mouse and us and a giraffe all have the same number of neck vertebrae. They're just wildly different sized, but the same number. So we're boring. Postcranial anatomy in mammals is remarkably conservative, whereas dinosaurs are dropping digits and they're adding neck vertebrae and they're doing stuff, which suggests the dynamics of what mutations are allowable, how many cis-regulatory elements there are relative to what's going on in mammals. And because birds are still around, theoretically, an awful lot of clues will be discernible from the genome baggage of birds. And it's only a matter of time that they start figuring more and more and more of that out, which will be more information for creationists to ignore. At least one of you, both either Crocker Squirrel or Jackson, all keep an eye on the side chat there, because I'll be glancing over occasionally. But if there's questions that come up or comments, just bump in there and bring it up so that we can have a meaningful interaction with the audience here on YouTube. Isn't that exciting? Oh, yes. I will, in lieu of that, call attention to Jackson, who is working on, it's going to be a kick butt book. The rocks are still there. We just finished up chapter 4, and he's working on additional chapters on the biological end, and I still got to get back to finishing off my radiometric chapter thing. But we've been doing, I think, a delightful job in giving a comprehensive demolition of the Answers in Genesis books and everything that connects up to it in anti-evolutionism. And this one, I think, is going to be a delightful feed that will fill a hole in the same way that Evolution Slam Dunk does. Oh, and may I plug, it's Christmas stocking stuffer time. Get your copies of Evolution Slam Dunk to give to your science reading friends and or people who you can't stand who are creationists. Just drop them that book on there. And I've also got the novel Paralogs of Phileas Fogg, also an excellent stocking stuffer for you fiction people. So there's my shameless plug on the bookends. But the rocks are still there. Give us a little heads up, Jackson, on your end from what you're working on in that.
What I'm working on is going to be the second to last chapter we're doing, at least that I have pegged so far, on the evolution section. After this, we'll be getting into more of the geology next, flood of Noah and things like that. But I've kind of consolidated a number of the creationist chapters into one because of how threadbare they are.
And how repetitive they are.
Right, exactly. Yeah, the Gary Parker chapter, which I did, had essentially one novel paragraph in it of like 8 pages. And that was it. And it was just this claim that organisms after speciation are now less genetically variable than their parent species. I don't know where he got that. He cites nothing, but that's essentially his only novel claim. Everything else is just kinds, mutations are bad, blah, 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 all that stuff. So then I went after Mike Riddle after that, and we've kind of hit him a few times. He's not going to be faring very well after this.
Yeah.
And his argument was on information, again, because creationists are always talking about information in the genome. But the thing is that he finally provides us with a definition, which is useless.
Useless and absurd, yes, but at least, well, you got to give him an A for effort. The fun part is, and we'll want to check up on more on that, is he making this one up on his own, or is he copying it from somebody else and never bothered to fact check it? That's the interesting question that we'll want to be exploring in that chapter, because Riddle has not shown a colossal aptitude for originality.
Well, to be perfectly honest with you, Riddle would have to have a brain before that. And I noticed also that the reference that he gave was that he had a bunch of scientists from a variety of fields, disparate fields. And he does not go to the trouble of naming any of them.
Identifying them, yes. It's like Donald Trump saying, some people say. Yeah, it's real easy to do that. But Riddle has never been terribly good at source material. And when he is using source material, as Jackson and I both know, he just copies stuff that he doesn't bother fact-checking. And so it makes him basically a conduit and a stenographer rather than somebody who's actually thinking things through well. We've also had some fun stuff on the YouTube end. We had a really wonderful, Jackson and I were both participants in a discussion that Steve McRae did with a giant midget who is a not young earth creationist, but anti-evolutionist, who had a variety of really quite good questions that he thought were being not answered properly by the evolution supporters. And I think that was a testament to how many evolution supporters maybe not be up on their game properly, because I think we showed that we were perfectly capable of discussing these things in ways I thought that he found really useful. And I'm wondering why other people hadn't done that. Well, they should use source methods.
Exactly. Yeah. His what he had said was that they told him to just read a book, essentially, which is not a great way to convince anyone of anything. I mean, as someone, both RJ and I have read a bunch of books on biology. There's a lot out there in books, certainly, but you're not going to convince anyone by telling them to go read this book. If you can't summarize for this person what the argument is, you don't know the argument.
Bingo. Yeah, that's the core argument that I took away from James Burke in the Old Connection series, when he would say that it's the object of the science educator to explain it, because if you your job is to explain it in a way that they will understand it. And the corollary that I put on that is that if you can't explain it to somebody, then you don't understand it. And so you need to have that familiarity with it. And I think some people in criticizing creationists, if they use that dodge, well, just read a book, it's because maybe they don't actually know the material well enough to be able to make a coherent argument, in which case they should shut up.
The flip side of that is that the evolutionists, the flat earthers, all these people just go say, they run off and say, well, look it up, do your own research. It's like, no, that's not my job. You're the one making the claim. You have to do the proving.
Right.
Oh yeah, and that source methods area is particularly useful. And another reason why I'm pushing source methods, because if you know their argument better than they do, and you know the science evidence they ignore way better than they do, now you get to play on a field that you know all the pieces. And you can pick and choose your questions very carefully to snag them up. I was having fun talking with some side people about the debate I had recently was Standing for Truth, where he was just basically repeating a lot of stuff on genetic information that he copied from Sanford and Crowd.
That's all he knows. That and Jensen, that's it.
He put in a bunch of links, which I then went through and tracked out every single one of them, and put in some comments on every single one of them. And he didn't know that. And I'm going, wait a minute, don't you get notifications the way I do on Google Chrome? I mean, the little thing pops up down in the little window, and every time any of the videos get referenced in that, doesn't that happen for him? A. B, when he repeated the claim, well, when are you going to respond to my points? I did. Just down below 4 days ago, see the little section where it starts up? Read that. And all of the ones he apparently couldn't figure out how to do that, so that then I had to copy up all of the things and paste it directly into a response to him. Excuse me, if the old fart in Spokane can do this stuff, figuring out how to navigate through a window, you can. This is just way behind the curve on that stuff. I use me as a benchmark here. I am not Mr. super high-tech savvy person who knows all the ins and outs and current stuff. So if I can figure out how to do it, everybody can do it. If I can track down the primary source, like Jackson and I independently did with those sebaceous glands in mastodons in like 5 seconds, what the hell was keeping Kent Hovind from doing that? So we can, every person who is in this area can use their own experience as a benchmark on it. There is no excuse for ignorance here. And I hope
I can tell you why I can tell you why Kent Hovind can't do that. because willfully stupid. It's just that easy. He's been parroting the same lines in exactly the same way, all dragged from Jack Chick.
Actually, it's the other way around. Chick actually relied on him as a source material, but it is the case that virtually everything in his core argument was coalesced back in the 80s and 90s, and he still relies upon a small core of particularly fringe people. He still pushes the Karl Baugh Paluxy track crap. And he relies on Walt Brown constantly. He's directly putting that up. But of course, we also know that he can go for Harun Yahya and some of these other apologetic sites that he clearly scavenges around. He claims to be doing his own research, in air quotes. And I don't have any reason to doubt him, because only somebody of Kent Hovind's incompetence could manage to rely upon Harun Yahya with a straight face.
Well, so, Adnan Akhtar is his own group of issues. I have no idea where that guy got any of that crap.
Oh, the vast majority of his stuff is culled from the largely intelligent design literature now. The very first book he did back in 1999, and by he, it's a little bit of a misnomer, because he actually has a little staff of idiot volunteers who actually do most of the writing for him, and then he puts his name on it. So he's kind of a silly brand. But we'll just credit it to him for the sake of argument. The first book he did actually was riffing off some of young Earth creationist stuff. They would be citing Gish and the like, and he stopped doing that in a hurry. So all the stuff from 2000 on has been largely culling material that's knocking around in the non-young Earth creationist venue. He steers clear of radiometric dating issues. He doesn't bother about geology and astrophysics unless it's anthropic arguments and that kind of stuff. But most of it's all just secondary biological material. They buff it up in that kind of hyperbolic way. There's a smug pseudoscience-y confidence about Harun Yahya that has a particular style to it that's kind of interesting. And that's how I cottoned onto it, because of the writing style, that there's a certain way he presents stuff in there, in the same way you get certain kind of apologetic styles from Ray Comfort or Jehovah's Witness types and all that. There's little subcultures of writing modes and certain kind of tropes that pop up. And each one of those can be used then as a way of detecting the daisy chain trail to find out who's copying from whom and who isn't doing their research. Atheists, could you put a link there to where you buy books in chat? Oh, absolutely. Let me put my little blurb up in here. And let me, I will be happy to do that. Although you can find it at my main website because I put links up on there, but we will make it real easy by putting direct links. And they're also available in ebook format too, but you can probably find that on Amazon. Let me put up Evolution Slam Dunk first. The one thing that I have learned from watching some of the people on video is do not let there be dead airtime. There are times when and it can be young people or old people, and they will be doing their video, and then they're reading some comments going on, and it's dead silence. No, no, no. Don't ever let the silence emerge. That's a problem. So there are the links to Evolution Slam Dunk and also the Paralogs of Phileas Fogg. I'm quite pleased and delighted with the works that I've done in this area. And I'm busy working on the second Fogg novel, as well as The Rocks Are Still There. So I get to write 2 or 3 works simultaneously, and let's see if my brain can be fried. And Surus, I got to download him tonight. He's I'm doing the audiobook version of the Paralogs, and I've got most of the novel recorded, and then he's got I think he just finished chapters 11, 12, and 13 that he's been sending back to me. And when I finish that and we get that coordinated and available for sale, that means we'll know all of the ins and outs of how to do things. Then I'm going to go back and do an audiobook version of Evolution Slam Dunk. It'll require some revamping because you cannot boringly read technical literature citations in an audiobook. That'll bore everybody to tears. So I'll have to do a major revamp and probably generate a book guide that would be just a PDF that people can download that will give all the source referencings and which sections they're all in, so they can track them down on their own. Kind of a chapterized version of the bibliography, I think, is how I'll do it. But since I know the author, I'm sure I can persuade him to restructure the book to suit the needs of the audiobook. And in that case, I'll try to do the second Paralogs novel so that it will come out audiobook the same time the hard copy does. And we'll do an audiobook of Rocks Are Still There, and so forth and so on. Unless Jackson wants to read some chapters and I read mine. I don't know whether he wants to do that or not. Uncertain there. It's my theatrical streak in there. And I think I can read my material better than anybody else does. And I can certainly adjust things on the fly. I know I had to make some minor adjustments in the audiobook of the novel because there are things that become unclear when read aloud that wouldn't be when you're just reading them on a page as to who's doing what talking and all that. And so I can make adjustments on the fly on that and do the same thing for the other book in that. Well, but it's apparently an interesting market. There are a lot of people that listen to audiobooks, and I figure, heck, why can't I get my stuff into that field as well? So everybody, either one of my books, please do so. A, because they're good books, and B, because I can use the royalties. Thank you very much. So that shameless plug is going on. Almost up. In fact, while I'm in shameless plug department, let me get that out of the way. Might as well put my patrons up. Let me do my little screen sharing again. And pain in the ass to find the little arrow. There we go. Boop. There we go. Thank you all, my tip patrons, Stephen and Marygale and Keith and Dyer and Andrew and Eat and Yui and Mona and Hendrel and Jen and Jody and Daniel and Ralph and Nyanya and Bo and Eric and Benjamin and Staggles and Alex and Sunsky and Suris, the guy who's working on that audiobook, Tot Israel, Everett, Tsur and Pal. SciStrike has told me that there are ways theoretically to extract the money better from Patreon, and the idea that Patreon can be more structured so that it can be recurring things, which would be really nice. But I'll also point out people can do that as well on the GoFundMe.com site as well. That if you are one of those who thinks, hey, I can spare like $60 a year, that's $5 a month, then consider being like a continuing supporter to where you would have that put up, a little small amount of money coming out automatically. That would be spectacular. And if I can get enough patrons on that level, I had enough spare cash this month to actually get some ink so that I was actually able to do the printing on the fly stuff, which I normally do in the ancient days. But when I don't have money for that, I have to put the files as PDF saved and then get to them someday to actually print up hard copy of them. And the same thing with doc files. I have these massive doc files of stuff where someday I'll be able to print that up. It's thousands of pages in some cases that it's going to pile up because I've been at this for quite a few years. But the best way is to be able to print up first page hard copy, and that can then be deposited in the stacks of the things that are segmented according to the structure of the tip project so that I can get to them and follow through as I cycle through the work on this. Someday, eventually, we're going to have to find some assistance and how we're going to swing that so that when I'm dead, the project will continue, because I intend this to be an ongoing thing. I always envisaged the tip project to be like a modern, updated, and constantly updatable Talk Origins, where it covers all the different subject matters and is always up to date, and new technical information is being folded in. So it's not something where you're looking at something that was written in 1997 and yipes, the science has moved on since then. So I wanted the tip project to be a scaffolding, and then also that it would be keeping track of the incoming technical literature, so that you have, and the anti-evolution literature, so you're ahead of the game, and that everybody that goes after creationism can draw on an extremely up-to-date argument, so they're ahead of the creationists instead of trying to play catch-up. So Heat Shield says that's the link I leave when RJ forgets before signing off. It's pretty much has it. Yeah, my www.tortukan.wordpress.com. I put links up to all my stuff there as best I can. I'm still a novice. I know I need to revise the YouTube thing so that they've got sub channels and things organized, and so some of the videos have gotten kind of lost in the shuffle because of which thing I was logged in on. I'm new at this game. And Atheist Joke Boy says, I have no technical knowledge, but if you need help cataloging that, I can do. Yeah, there's a lot of side elements to do. In principle, a lot of the stuff needs to be done real time with the material that I've got, that I would ideally need like a place where I could sort through all of the technical literature and get them subcategoried so that I can find them easily. When I did Slam Dunk, I had to plow through stacks of material in a big blob and pull out all of the stuff and sort it out, the material for the reptile-mammal transition part, so that I could do the book. And so everybody who's seen Slam Dunk will see, boy, I have a lot of stuff. And that's just a tip of the iceberg compared to all the material that I have. It's a different way of approaching it than the trying to catch the gish galloping. That's been the way that things have been done previously. And you could see in my debate with Kent Hovind that I have a different approach to things because I'm coming at it from a source methods direction. He could gish gallop all he wants, but then I can deflate him at the source level to say, oh, who cares how much he gish gallops? His method is fundamentally wrong, and it's wrong for this and this and this and this example, and just wait for him to try to counter on that one. So it's a powerful tool. It also means that you're looking at primary source material, and therefore you're studying stuff at the technical level. That's way above the rarefied philosophical thing. That's at the data floor. And that's where creationists screw up, is at the methods and data floor level. The moment you're going after it as a philosophy, where you're just talking about, well, read a book, or you believe in talking donkeys, or some side issue like that, you are operating on a weak argument. You're not able to attack them at their source methods. And I want to get more and more people on that little bandwagon. Well, now that I got the shameless plug out of the way, the next links that I put up were to, I love it when creationists try to throw information at me as though I've never heard of any of this stuff before, and then I can follow up on it. And one of them is, oh, there are mysterious anomalous fossils. There are trackways of horses in the Cambrian, in the Grand Canyon.
What?
Oh, really? Are there? And it turns out that this is from a creationist website. So I put the link up to the website that this guy was referring to. And I put the original paper that the creationist was theoretically drawing on. This was an old 1982 study. That's perfectly fine. And it just alluded to this as a side issue that dated back way earlier. Well, Lockley, who is one of the ichnology guys, who is always looking at ichnofossils, fossil trackways, did a whole paper on this, and I put the linkage up to that, where he and some co-authors went through and they figured out, no, this is not a mule traipsing around in the Cambrian. It's a particular kind of a little odd thing that's occurred from the way that rocks form in particular contexts, and they went into all the little details on it. So it just blew it to smithereens. And again, it took me like 5 or 10 minutes to locate this. What was preventing the creationist on Twitter from doing that? I know. His little mouse hand turns into a clump, and he just can't hunt around online. He can't click on a PDF. He can't Google search. Oh, I feel so sorry for those people. No, I don't feel sorry for those people. I am contemptible. Disdain for such people.
Exactly. Yeah, I was yeah, and in the debate I had with Hovind, the fact that he couldn't look up whether or not mammoths had sebaceous glands after how many years?
Yeah, all this time.
I did it during the debate.
Laziness. It's pure effing laziness that you are a college student, so you have accessibility to a lot of the college venues that non-college students wouldn't have. But I'm the old fart in his den. I can find that material in a few seconds. Anybody can. And so nobody, absolutely nobody, can be let off the hook at this methods level for failure to look up this information. It's pure cussed laziness. And we have to make it so that the lazy person will still be lazy, but the problem is they must never be considered normal or okay. Puffalophagus said that Kent had no problem Googling how to dodge caste structuring laws. Actually, he didn't even do that. He relied on a subculture of wackaloon tax code. The government isn't real and they have no right to tax you, and you can get away with this. There was, I can't remember the name of the guy, but I know Peter Riley at Forbes has been following this, and I put, if you look at my bibliography under that section, I got like a scad of postings that he's done, because he followed it from the tax lawyer side for Forbes. And that's where Kent got the wackaloon ideas from. And one of his supporters, by the way, of this weird tax code thing is a flat earther. So it's an interesting bunch of people. You have ones that are at the very bottom, pathetic end, the bottom. Oh, for those of you who haven't seen my debate with Kent Hovind, please do so. And although I'm still jealous, Jackson's debate with Kent has been seen by more people than mine. That's because he's got the pretty face and I don't.
Well, here's what it is. I get.
Well, you have an excellent following, and rightly so.
Do what?
I said I'm going to assume that's a guess on RJ's part.
No, I keep track of how. Well, yeah. Well, I mean, a block of wood is more photogenic than I am, so
No.
I look like Niccolo Machiavelli, who's been left out in the rain a little too long. But
ridiculous.
Yeah, but anyway, it is my side of it, I think I'm just over a couple thousand views and climbing little bit by little bit, but I'd like it way more than that. I'd love to have tens of thousands of people see it. And I would like people, your debate and mine with Hovin, we really rake him over the coals. I think we in our own ways do better than Aaron Ra did.
Possibly. I don't know. I mean, when I did it, I was trying to go after his, these things that I had seen on the video that you sent me of his that I thought were just so insanely outlandish that not even he could still believe these things. Lo and behold, I was wrong.
Yeah.
He doesn't think paleomagnetic reversals are real. I didn't even know this was up for debate, or that mammoths were polar animals. It's like, what century is he living in?
Best guess, probably the 12th, somewhere between the 3rd and the 12th century.
He's living in the creationist worldview that he picked up in the 80s and 90s, and that has congealed into like this desiccated cobweb of ignorance, and that he just doubles down on. And all of his research since then is merely in service of finding potential new examples of the things he already believed. He's not paying much attention to stuff. Heck, he doesn't know enough about baraminology to put into a gnat's navel. We know way more about it than he does. So we read more creationist literature than he does.
Well, it seems it's my impression that we don't know anything about it, and we still know more than he does.
That could be true. But yeah, the fact that even the creationists can't use the terms they invented to assess these arguments is pathetic, and yet they come over to our side and try to redefine our words.
I gotta give the provenance on that. There's an old character. Oh my God, I think I just had a brain fart. I'm trying to think of Fred Allen. He was kind of like a cross between Johnny Carson and Colbert of the 1930s and 40s. He was on radio. This is even before my time. But he had a caustic comment where he said that all the sincerity in Hollywood you could put into 3 gnats' navels. You could put in a gnat's navel, and there would be room left over for 3 caraway seeds and an agent's heart. That's the whole line. And Fred Allen was very droll. I enjoy him a lot, but he didn't really he died very early in the television era, so he really didn't get a chance to do that, but he would have been a shoe-in for that kind of stuff. Puffalovica says, we have folks just like Kent in racing. We call them losers with excuses. Yeah. Well, Kent is whiny in victory and insufferable in defeat. Or the other way around. It's hard to tell with him. He's hyper confident. Jump in there, Lord.
I think if you're going to try and make that one work, or make that work at all, you'd have to find a case in which he actually managed to achieve a victory. He's just insufferable.
He declares victory. He announces how perfect and fabulous he is, and his supporters accept him. C. Brown and Matt Powell, who together are not even a quarter wit, were proclaiming how fabulous Kent did in his debate with me. And you're going,
what?
Yeah.
Were you watching the same thing I was? I bet.
Yeah, they were insisting that Kent just won and had complete command of the debate. So if you have that kind of a mindset where, and Gish's followers were the same way. Although, frankly, Dwayne Gish did pretty damn good in debates because he was so agile at it. He was usually far more skilled at galloping around. Kent is an Achilles heel person. He's got his tropes. But if you know where he's doing stuff, he's so rote and routine that if you can't manage to skewer Kent Hovind, it's because you haven't done your homework. He's got a huge video trail. And of course, if you can find his doctoral dissertation in air quotes, that one is it's a rib tickler to read. Yeah, if you want to see how not to do a doctoral dissertation, Kent Hovind is an exemplar of it.
My name is Kent Hovind.
Read this. Don't do this.
I'm writing a paper, and it's It's due in a month.
and he left the spell checker off.
Well,
And so
the worst part of that is that if I really wanted to, I could throw off something like that in about 4 hours. You know,
I mean, that wouldn't even pass in anyone's class, let alone for a dissertation. If even a grad student saw that paper, they would know. Just no, this goes in the shredder.
yeah, I mean, we can agree at least that John
Sanford. I'm going to be completely straight with you guys. I wouldn't have gotten away with that shit in the 5th fucking grade. Seriously,
no, probably not.
Oh yeah, this would be this wouldn't pass muster even in grade school apologetics when I was growing up, and frankly, the standards are much higher now. That you're getting some in a lot of high schools, and now you're getting remarkably sophisticated writing popping up across the board. The standards are way higher in many respects. It's a mixed bag on the world of things. But Kant doesn't operate in a world of words. He operates in a world of preaching, and all his structure is to present his lead people to Jesus thing, which is why I count my debate as higher than yours, even, Jackson, and Aaron and others, because I derailed his apologetic. He never presented his bring people to Jesus end tag because he was so completely thrown off by my argument that he was just playing catch up all the way through. And I count that as a brownie point in how well I did.
Didn't he rage quit on you?
No,
he was there the whole time. Quit on you?
No, he was there. He stayed the whole time.
Yeah. No, he could see him fuming at various times because
Altar Boy
as I keep
RJ.
on insisting to everybody, source methods is a game Tortukans cannot play. It's not merely that they do badly at it. They literally, their minds just don't do that. If they could, they wouldn't believe what they do. So the more you force them onto a source level to where they have to defend their source usage, and it's not merely that you're presenting data field, which like what you were doing with the sebaceous glands, that's data field. It's then to make it a source issue is how come you can't find this material? Or you brought up this source and you suppressed its content, or you brought up this source and relied upon an unreliable source, like I did with the Harun Yahya thing. All of those are source methods questions, and he is very ill-equipped to deal with that kind of thing because it cuts to the core of his self-esteem element. The other thing that I like to bring up, which I did in the debate, is the fact that nobody takes him seriously in creationism. He likes to preen at the name droppings and things that he does, but he's a nobody on the field of upper echelon creationists. They don't cite him. They could care less about him. The Hovian theory, I love that part. That's just warmed over Don Patton's ice canopy. I mean, this is stuff from the 1960s. It's not original. He lifts other people's ideas and then manages to mangle them and double down on them with a relentlessness which is pathetic. But it's up to us to expose all of that. You got to get the bright lights of scholarship out there and watch the little cockroach scurry from one dark hole after another as you remove all of the dark holes. Where can he go? Nowhere. It won't persuade his followers that they're wrong because they're unpersuadable. They're just like he is. So you have Matt Powell, who is a flaming Tortugan, relying on Kent Hovian, flaming Tortugan, who relies on Walt Brown, flaming Tortugan. There is a pattern here.
Exactly. Yeah. Same with some of the things we've covered in the Answers book, where you had White relying on Bergman, relying on Sarfati.
Okay.
And yet all of them missed the data.
Oh, a pre-trib asks, is RJ debating Standing for Truth again or even Kent again? I would be flabbergasted if Kent ever appears in a debate with me ever again. And for the reason that he will not want to repeat the experience that he had the first time. SFT, I don't know whether he might or not. We'll find out. He's slightly more amiable, but he's just as fuddle-headed. I have no problem debating anybody under any circumstances. Nim brings up the notion discussing or debating, not debating, dirt baiting. It's all a matter of how you approach the source elements. Hovind must have felt he had an advantage because he wanted to force me onto a standard debating format where he knew how to do all of that. And I don't mind format. Format is irrelevant. I can adapt source methods to all formats. The only ones that I have trouble with are the ones who can control the microphone and blather. So when Nephilim had his after talk show, where he just was repeating the same thing over and over and over and over, that drives me nuts. It's interesting that I'll give props to Modern Day Hysteria. He is a fair moderator, well, virtually all the time.
Definitely.
He's pretty damn even-handed. He would even tell Nephilim, well, that point has been argued, you're disagreeing, let's move on. Right. And that's I'm okay with that. There are, in fact, a utility to having a formal debate as opposed to a discussion. Because in a discussion, if you've got the side where they just go on and on, that can be lopsided. But a formal debate forces both sides to shut up at some point. And you can take advantage of that. I can be taking notes about what my opponent is saying. It doesn't matter whether they go first or not. With Kent, I knew what he was going to say. So but also I had an advantage in going first because I could pull the rug out from under his argument before he gets to it. And that's a thing. So debating structure, I've done only now 3 or 4 debates in varying structure formats.
That was my
getting
first
better
one.
And better, I think.
That was my first and only debate I've done so far.
And how did you feel coming out of that?
I felt really good coming out of it. I was extremely anxious going into it. And I think having the script, which allowed me to get through my points and then be able to respond to his points, was very helpful. I think that was very helpful.
Preparation is everything, so that you have a framework that you can easily present and get your points in within the time frame. That's another thing that I've noticed that sloppy people have troubles with. If you tell me I have 12 minutes, I'll figure out how to say what I need in 12 minutes. If I have 10 minutes, I'll figure out how to say it in 10 minutes. If I have 15, I'll do that. I will adapt to the environment. I was looking at a lecture once that Casey Luskin gave, and he had 20 minutes to do his spiel. He brought in a PowerPoint designed for an hour and a half. And literally, here he is getting it to like 15 minutes on. Well, I've got to speed up my PowerPoint here and skip past stuff. Do you have such pathetic lack of respect for your audience that you do not adapt your presentation to the venue? I do.
Yeah.
So it's all a matter of getting used to doing it and finding what you can use to your advantage. So I don't have so much of a problem about the debating format, that you can make use of it to get your points across. The area that I'm really big on is having a good Q&A. Oh, I love Q&A. Because now you are bypassing the person you're debating and you're interacting with communicating to the audience. And they are telling you what's important. And if you answer all of their questions effectively, you're planting seeds that wouldn't be there otherwise, which brings up Giant Midget. I think both of us did quite a good job on that in reasonably answering his questions. And I think getting little gears going in his head.
Yeah. Definitely. Most of his questions, it seemed, were on, most of his questions were on topics in chronostratigraphy. Is it, how do we date organisms? How do we know these things?
Yeah.
Preceded or followed the other ones. Aside from that, he did ask, essentially, how do we do phylogenetics at one point, which I was very happy to answer, because that's my area, Yeah.
And it's an area that is really critical for people to have a grip on if you're going to bring up evolution, because all of cladistics and modern systematics is aimed to work out what the actual lineage of life is. And they have criteria for doing it, and it's really meticulous. And that's why you can get into little fistfights on certain little subcategories. But it's surprising how much has been settled in all of that fist fighting, that there are some areas where nobody has any doubt that a particular animal is really closely related to another animal. They may debate about which its cousin is, and there you always then have to relate to the geologic context. As I've called attention to with Gunter Beckley, with his spiel, bringing up the damn turtles and ichthyosaurs and marine reptiles. And I'm going, this is Bermuda Triangle defense again. if you don't know about what Bermuda Triangle defense is, you should read my damn book that's up on the website.
Oh, speaking of ichthyosaur, RJ, did you hear about the new discovery with the ichthyosaur soft tissue from the Jurassic?
Oh, yeah, yeah. They got a little teeny snippet of that stuff, and they'll probably be looking at it in great detail on there. There's so much more known. It'd be nicer if we had, again, this Bermuda Triangle defense issue is that you're looking at very early Triassic rock deposits to be able to find out the origins for these groups. And there aren't many early Triassic rock deposits that are marine. The ocean gets recycled. There's practically no ocean stuff that dates earlier than the Cretaceous. So it's just smatterings of stuff here and there. So you're at the luck of the draw. Plesiosaurs and nothosaurs, that's actually much better developed. And they've gotten quite a lot of the little intermediate forms in there. And turtles, holy moly, we have a much better grip upon the origin of turtles than we did before. And Beckley made the mistake of actually citing one of these things on the early transitional stages of turtles, a form that doesn't even have a shell yet. And he's saying this is just a normal turtle. Are you looking closely at this, Gunther? And so it's really weird. And the other thing that pops up from a source methods direction, which is the big number 3, what do you think happened, map of time, that Beckley can't figure out what he thinks happened. And it turns out every creationist, if you press them, they don't really know what they think happened. They have a thing they don't want. Oh, it mustn't be Darwinian. It mustn't be evolution. It can't be that. But what do you think happened? If I got in a time machine and went back and looked at a design event, what would it look like? And literally, their brains have never pondered that.
Tornadoes. Well, the creation or Genesis Paradise Lost established the answer. It's freaking tornadoes where the animals just run out of them.
Yeah.
They talk about tornadoes in the junkyard, and then they depict creation as a bunch of tornadoes in Eden.
It's solved, RJ. We got this one down.
Yeah, there we go. Yes, it's all right. Pretty.
That part of it still doesn't work. You can't. It's that tornado in the junkyard thing.
Croc a squirrel. Facts. The facts.
These
are all facts.
They deny this. They thoroughly use that to smack things around when we're actually talking about how all the evolution actually occurs, and then they use it.
You have to think
to say how creation did it.
Well, I mean, you have to think someone on the production team had to see the irony. There's no way it went over all of their heads that's what they were doing.
I never underestimate the obtuseness of Tortukans. Nim asks, James Nutter, next time you should ask Nephilim about his translocation of wildlife paper.
Oh, God, no.
Please Robertsonian translocations. Has he written such a paper?
RJ, please don't do it. Please, just don't.
We'd like you to maintain your sanity at least another week.
Yeah.
Please, don't do that.
Am I to surmise that Nephilim's argument here is as stupid as Mr. Intelligent Design?
It's worse.
With all the venom.
It's worse. It's more stupid.
Yeah. The level of stupid involved here makes Mr. Intelligent Design look intelligent.
Oh dear.
Yeah,
and of course Nephilim does not have nearly the charm of Edgar.
Well, see, that's the thing. I think he's always been pretty nice to me. I think he's always been pretty kind to me. Edgar was
rude, just monotonous.
I mean, I thought, Edgar was just kind of there. He was just kind of doing his thing and trying to explain it, and it just didn't really work out. But although he did come back and he told me later, he was like, the last time I respected Aaron too much. Next time I'm going to put my foot down and try to be more assertive. And I was like, I'm never getting you in a room with him again.
Yeah, all I'm going to say at this point is good luck with that dude.
Yeah, try to even get in touch with it. Good luck. I'm not going to put Aaron through that again.
Like that. That would be even worse.
I think I owe it to Aaron to not make him go through that again.
What we all want to do as a bigger picture element is to make source methods and litmus test technical literature and examples with particular people who get things wrong part of the kit bag so that everybody can be running as quickly as possible here. I want to have it that there's relatively little of reinventing the wheel. Too many people might be diving into the creation evolution case, having to do all their own work from scratch, and they don't know what's already been done, some cases, because it wasn't done online. That's the big area that's awkward, is that if I had been relying only on what was accessible online, I couldn't have done Evolution Slam Dunk. I had to have an awful lot of material that was available in print format that I was able to look at to make it comprehensive. So although the internet is a fantastic medium in many ways, it's not the only one. And the idea that there's also that historical thing. I know, I'm hoping that, Jackson, you've experienced this as well, that you realize that you're coming at it in a particular window. You don't realize often how people you're bumping into have a long history connecting up with previous creationism. And it's my job as the old fart to bring all of that stuff in, to be able to put things into even larger context. So here is Person with Head Up His Ass in 2018. It is a long tradition of head up ass, as we can see from the previous iterations on that.
Right.
And,
you're absolutely right on that. Yeah, I don't have the knowledge of the history of these things. And so when I come at it, I'm just like, oh, well, this is wrong. Here's a paper for it that explains why it's wrong, but I don't really ever.
And I go, oh, I know that one way back. And you get the provenance. There's relatively little fresh under the sun in anti-evolutionism, that you get conceptual frames that are always there.
As John Sanford shows, because he is just a trope, which I really like the way that you revamped that little bit, where Sanford's new ideas, I mean, they're not really new. He's cribbing newer work, but it's for this idea that's been around since at least the 60s.
And was wrong to begin with.
This is a doctrinal position. He's just using newer science to make it sound more plausible.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's the job of the analyst to be able to hit both of those frames. Not merely the historical context, which some people would focus on at the deference to the technical literature. I feel that what's important with the book that we're doing is we're not merely doing a dry, dusty historical exercise. We're hitting their best guns, their heavy hitters. We're hitting every bloody one of them right at the primary source material, and showing not only how bad they are at the sources they cite, but how the work didn't stop. You know, when Sanford brings up a 1997 paper as if the science stopped in the era of fax machines, when we have all of this direct data, genes from actual archaic humans and Neanderthals and Denisovans, and it doesn't fit his model, and he somehow misses all of it. Whoa.
Well, of course he does. Of course he does, because that shit doesn't support him. Not that his original stuff supported him. It was just a case of he could muddle the early stuff much better, because it's harder for people like you, me, and Jackson to look up.
Yeah, the only problem is I actually have a creationist to thank for figuring out that Sanford is just supporting this position before there were any facts known about it. With these later facts, it's so beautiful to see that it's not about the data. It was never about the data. It was about this belief set that they've always held, and he just wants to support it.
It served a larger point, that he keeps it under wraps. He only brings up Noah and the patriarchs once, way late in the book. But that's the reason why he's doing all of this. In his model, all of this genetic entropy deterioration is because of Adam's sinning, and then the post-flood deterioration as the patriarchs that lived to be hundreds of years old gradually ferret down to the normal growth that we find in later people. And you find Jeffrey Tompkins writing that stupid paper where he's trying to argue for an exponential decline in the patriarch ages and all of that. I mean, yipes! This is like trying to do an analysis of elf genetics from reading Lord of the Rings. I mean, it's just asinine.
Why would you bother doing that? That's my question. There is absolutely no reason to do something like that unless you just have a freaking unless you have an intellectual death wish.
Well, yeah, the irony would be that no one would ever think of doing elf genetics because it's just a book. But you do find the counterparts of that with the Bible, because it's not just a book to them. It's the revealed word of God that explains everything. And therefore, everything in the universe must, in principle, be comportable to it. Well, the problem is nothing in the universe is matchable to it. And so it's a matter of them knocking pieces off and rearranging and shuffleboarding. And it's a complete mess on here. Well, we're just at 6 o'clock.
There's exactly zero evidence for anything that actually happened.
Yeah, and that brings us into so many different areas. The thing that in writing purely about intelligent design, you can talk about purely genetic and scientific information, but creationism drags in those side issues. And what's revealing is that Sanford has done a variety of papers with intelligent designers, and I draw attention to it in the new book with Jackson. But he doesn't mention anything about all this Noah stuff. He keeps that compartmentalized over in his creationist apologetics. And this is one of the neat things, is to find out what audiences they're presenting. That Sanford is being mainstreamed into the intelligent design community, which is just guffaw. And so here the design community is drawing on poor creationist models, and now they're in an incestuous mode. By the way, hopefully some of the material, we were just talking with this earlier in our interior chat, that Michael Herron, we cite in the new book, and he's going to be a guest on Evolution Hour early in January. So I'm going to make him available, apprise him of that chapter 4 material in which he is being cited, and hopefully we'll be able to discuss a lot of the material about the Lenski experiments and insights on what we're doing, and hopefully that we're not making any mistakes on there. So this should be a...
Why is Nonsec talking to Edgar? It seems like a really bad... That seems like an instant garbage fire.
Well, it's a waste of time. I mean, he's an amiable crank, but Edgar, if you've never seen Edgar, Mr. Intelligent Design, I think he's from the Philippines or somewhere, and he's a perfectly sweet little fellow. He's amiable and pleasant, and he's a complete nutball. He is a geocentrist young Earth creationist who even made Kent Hovind befuddled when he had a chat with him.
Well, I mean,
that was hilarious.
I saw that chat. I think I walked away about 2/3 of the way through. It was Mr. Edgar was just yammering. Kent was gone. He left.
Yeah, Edgar has this idea. Edgar has this idea that he has found the great discovery of intelligent design, and it is an incoherent piece of nutballery. If he lived in the 19th century, he would be having a lot of all caps and hand printed placards that he would be handing out at parks. Now he's doing YouTube videos, but he is terribly amiable. He doesn't have temperament or anything like that. But if you can manage to stick with Edgar longer than 5 minutes, you have a bowel of iron, because he is extremely repetitive and boring, and you can literally never get him to discuss data. He doesn't know diddly squat about data. It's a purely abstract. His only data is that he's dropped eggs on paper towels.
Tissue paper.
I'm not making this up.
No.
That he's dropping eggs on paper towels, and this has demonstrated the intelligent design model in a way that he can never explain to anybody, and perhaps not even to himself.
RJ, what you know what I bet? I bet he's probably onto something, like the most important discovery of this century, and just nobody can understand what he's saying. But in a century from now, they'll look back and recognize him as the first person.
Yeah. In the post-Trump era, when that becomes normal, then it will be deemed to be, this will be the one. But yeah, there have always been people exactly like that. And if you read, if you haven't ever read Martin Gardner's old book, oh good gravy, I can't think of the name of it offhand. It's Fads and Fallacies in the Name of Science. It's an old thing that he did way back in the 1950s. I think it's still in print in various forms, and Martin Gardner died a few years back. But it's a classic on a variety of what seemed at the time all dying things, like there was stuff on the flat earth movement, and some of the weird little sub branches of that, and creationism, which was seen as something that was just silly and antiquated in the 1950s. Ironically, this was before the rise of modern creation science, and so he had to kind of eat his words on that one. But it's and Velikovsky gets in there as well, and which touches on me because I had my little Velikovsky phase. But it's still a delightful book, and it's funny, and you realize that the kinds of people that you're seeing on YouTube who are doing things on why water is an element, or why the flat Earth is still true. These are the same kinds of people that were knocking around in the 1900s and the 19th century. You're just seeing them on YouTube, and so
you mean
they have a
Peter.
yeah,
Or
yeah,
Peter
yeah, Peter. Yeah, this is nothing new, and I do not know that there is a higher incidence of that level of nutballery, other than the fact that there are more people on the planet. So if you got 7 billion people, the same proportion of nutballs produce a larger number, and they all got YouTube channels. So we tend to notice them in a way that we didn't before. Whether or not they are a long-term threat or not, I don't know. But I am trying to fight the good fight by instilling in everybody the source methods approach, which is the game they can't play. So we're past the hour. Thank you very much for staying on the show on there. I'll say again, if you need that perfect stocking stuffer of science or novels, I've got the books for you. So go rush off to your Amazon today and maybe buy some copies and donate them to your library, and let everybody at FFRF and American Atheists and Bill Nye and Jerry Coyne and Neil deGrasse Tyson know all about this and my work. And let's start 2019 with a bang. Okay. Well, we'll stop. Any last thoughts from either of you two, Peanut Gallery?
Good times.
Well, I'll let Jackson go first. Go ahead.
I was just saying, good times, all good times.
Yeah. I still want a shot at Lyle.
Jason Lyle. Oh, yeah. Remember, in fact, we were just discussing this, Jackson and I, that he didn't want to do a cosmology chapter, but I think we should, and I'm going to tackle that. So yes, we are going to be taking on Jason Lyle in Rocks Are Still There. That can make you happy?
Oh, actually, I'd like a shot at getting in on that.
Write up a piece and lob it off to me. I'll be happy to incorporate any material on that as well.
What I need is his original claims. If we can get if somebody's got an ebook for that, that would be, or some sort of. That would
first off, you'll know what I'll know. You've downloaded my bibliography.
I should probably do that again.
You should probably do that. Don't print it, unless you feel like spending thousands of pages. You don't want to do that.
I don't even have a printer attached to this machine. I have to.
Well, then you don't have to worry about it then. But you can download the PDF in there, so you can download the L through Z's and look up Jason Lyle, and you'll see all that I have on him. And if he's co-author of anything, just do a word search, and you'll see him pop up elsewhere. He may have some of the stuff in the A through.
I was actually looking at specifically what he's dealt with and what he was making the claims of in the AIG books. So,
yeah. Let me take a look here. His 2 chapters. The first one is even more hilarious than the other one. Are ETs and UFOs real? And then he has, does distant starlight prove the universe is old? He's written quite a lot of stuff on that. And he's gone after flat earthers. I think he's written some criticism of them from a biblical perspective, which is ironic. But you'll see that he has actually quite an extensive, he's one of their technical point people because he's got an actual PhD. And so he's got scientific credentials, but boy, does he have access to crime. So he's another one that's high up on their apologetic food chain. And the fact that he's in there, no, we need to go after him.
Yeah, we need to. Yeah, I need to get my hands on a PDF or something for that book there.
We'll talk after this, RJ.
Okay, we will be stopping the broadcast and we will continue discussing after this. So thanks for everybody joining in. Keep on spreading the word on the project. Source methods, yay, use it.